What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. I hope everyone is just feeling nice and relaxed because on today's video, like the title says, it's another album review, and this time it's for Loathe. I let it in and it took everything. So if you're out of the loop, Loathe consists of a 5-piece band from Liverpool, England that's getting very hyped, and it's a very exciting underground metalcore band, and they're ready to leave their mark with their new album, I Let It In, and it took everything. Now, I've already featured 3 tracks on this channel for reaction videos from the new album, and it's kind of showcased that they have their progressive, sludgy metalcore side, but then they have their also newish shoegaze alternative rock side as well. But I'm going to base this review off a singular comment from one of those videos where someone says that Loathe is the future. And after hearing the album several times myself, I want to argue with that opinion, whether or not Loathe are indeed the future of metalcore, or if this album is just kind of falls flat with too many ideas. But yeah, I feel like that's enough chit chat and I want to get into the album review, so let's effing do it. First things first, when you get into the first track of the CD theme, it really shows a different kind of sound that this band is trying to feature. It's a lot different than their predecessor, The Cold Sun. With bassy synthesizers that intensify throughout its minute-long duration, gives off a very cinematic feel that you're watching kind of like a Blade Runner movie. And this intro alone feels much different than other intros that you hear in their contemporaries from other metalcore releases. Now, the intro bleeds into the song Aggressive Evolution, and the title of the song alone fits the chaotic nature of this track. So I've already done a reaction where I gave off my first impressions, but after hearing the song many more times, this song is truly amazing, and it's so aggressive with its crazy song structure. And a vocal performance from vocalist Kadeem France with shouts, growls, mumbles, and then there's clean angelic vocals from the guitarist Eric in the chorus. The performance of the vocals are never monotonous, and they're always showcasing different variety in the phrasing, whether, like I said, it's the mumbles or the growls. It always keeps you on your toes, and it's really refreshing. And these chaotic kind of vocals are found even more so in the next track, Broken Vision Rhythm, really showcasing the progressive nature of this band with its unpredictable song structures, with its sludgy metal, with those bassy guitar tones. And what I really appreciate about this album is that you can hear the bass, you can feel the groove, and it just wants you to headbang to. The drumming incorporates hardcore beats with blast beats mixed in, and like I said, these sludgy guitars, but have lots of feedback that sound dirty and messy, which fits the overall mood of the album. Now, this album is really dark and melancholic with these sad lyrics, but at the same time, it's got so much groove that you can't help not to headbang to some of the rhythms, and the rhythms are always ever changing. Sometimes it's super fast, and other times it breaks it down for a heavy-ass breakdown. Now, in comparison to their previous album, The Cold Sun, their progressive new metalcore sound is kind of like what you expect from Loathe, but how they change it up and make it more exciting on this album is all the different elements of electronics, all these different vocal samples, all the guitar playing that is based on not functionality and kind of like what they're trying to do, achieve like technicality wise, but rather it's the feeling. And I think that's very important, especially in a metalcore band where they're actually trying to evoke feeling rather than technicality. And so far from this album, you kind of expect what you've heard from The Cold Sun, but then the next track that leads in, Two-Way Mirror, really throws you in for a loop. Two-Way Mirror is a nostalgic feeling track reminiscent of their strongly influenced peers Deftones, a shoegazy dreamlike track that gives a nice breathing room to the chaotic nature of their progressive new metalcore sound. Now, Loathe incorporates shoegaze into their traditional kind of sound rather than changing the whole band's sound as a whole like their contemporaries 100th, which turned into a shoegaze band. And Two-Way Mirror is just one of the many songs on this record that really shows this dreamy trance-like alternative rock sound that they're going for. Other songs like Is It Really You and A Sad Cartoon really shows that this band has different sounds that they're ready to offer to the table. And one of my personal favorites off the album, Screaming, sounds like it could fit into Thrice's Beggars with vocals that are almost similar to Balance and Composure. but the vocals are different enough from their influences where Kadeem brings in his harsh vocals that just sound so brutal again. Another stellar track on the album is It Really You, which starts off with this Blade Runner Stranger Things synth that bleeds into crunchy guitars and dreamlike verses that keeps you mesmerized, with soaring vocals in the chorus with beautiful hooks to keep you wanting more. This is easily one of the most beautiful songs on the record, and I love how it ends. It ends with some acoustic playing, which is nice and refreshing to the ear, but then it brings in this really bassy synth, or maybe it's guitar feedback that just sounds so cool, and I actually wish it was a little bit longer. I love the lead in with this reverse played effect that it has too. Really beautiful ending to such a really cool song. And another track on the CD that showcases their shoegaze alternative rock sound is A Sad Cartoon. This song, just like some of the others, feels very 90s. It feels nostalgic, almost reminiscent of Smashing Pumpkins kind of guitar playing with Chino's vocals from Deftones, which leads into the reprise portion of the song that gives off like an 80s feeling that sounds like it could be from Stranger Things. Now, all these fantastic shoegaze, dreamlike songs that almost feel very 90s is in direct contrast to their futuristic, really chaotic, progressive metalcore songs that they have to offer, and there's still many that I haven't touched on. Songs like Aggressive Evolution, New Faces in the Dark, and the very like Meshuggah inspired riffage of Gord. And as you begin to pinpoint the sound of this band into one specific kind of genre, they like to change it up ever again by bringing a new subgenre of black metal. Heavy is the head that falls with the weight of 1,000 thoughts. Long song title for a really cool song, which starts off, like I said, with this black metal element, but it leads into this head-bopping verse and crushing breakdowns with slidey guitars, pounding drums, and again, guttural vocals from Kadeem. Only for it to end with this Silent Hill-esque kind of like vocal sample used at the end of the song. This is a very dark sounding album, and it totally reminds me of like some horror flicks, and like especially Silent Hill. I got some very strong Silent Hill vibes from this album, and if you know me, then you know I love Silent Hill. This band continues to maximize their creativity without having too many ideas, having too much experimentation where it becomes a little too self-absorbed. And the final track on the album, the same title as the album itself, I Let It In and Took Everything, showcases everything that Loathe has to offer on this album all into one song. It's the 14th track on the album, and you think Loathe has used all the tricks in the bag, but they delivered one of the best songs on the record that brings in all the best elements from the album, like the bombastic signature metalcore to their new shoegazing-inspired slower sections with strong synths that fits the overall dark melody feel of this album. All in all, this is one of the best metalcore releases I've heard in years. I love the guitar playing. Like I said, it's based on not technicality, but rather feeling. And the ever-changing vocal deliveries from Kadeem, where it's like whispers, harsh vocals to these growls and these shouts, and then these clean, softer sections that are Kadeem brings them in himself, but then Eric brings in these really nice angelic vocals too, brings in nice hooks and melodies so you can sing along as well. This album is so unpredictable, it's amazing. Drumming is another standout part of this band too. It's enough interesting beats to keep you on your toes, but it doesn't overshadow the music, and it's not there to show off, but rather be the backbone to the music itself. And like I said earlier, audible bass, which is huge. You can hear the bass tone. It is crunchy and smooth at the same time. It gives a nice groove where you can't help to headbang to the groove of this album. Each track feels uniquely different from one another, and it really shows the unpredictability nature of this album, but the variety in the tracks and the experimentation, like I said, is not self-absorbed. It's enough creativity to keep you on your toes, which is exceptional. Now, going back to that guy's point, is Loathe really the future? I wouldn't really consider them the future of metalcore rather than an off branch at metalcore where they're doing their own thing and no one can compete. Because Loathe has a distinct sound that very few can imitate. Sure, they're wearing their influences on their sleeve like Deftones, Smashing Pumpkins, Meshuggah, whatever, but they have their own sound still, which is uniquely themselves. This album is for sure going to push boundaries of what metalcore can be, and I totally salute them for that. It's an album that has taken lots of risk, and in a way, people have kind of categorized them as new metalcore, and I don't think that's fair, or even progressive metalcore. They have their own brand, and I would kind of call them avant-garde metalcore. This truly is a fantastic album, and it's not just one of the best metalcore albums I've heard in years, it's one of the best general albums I've heard in years. And for the score, I give it a 10 out of 10. Now, I don't give many 10 out of 10s, and this is the first 10 out of 10 I've given to an album on this channel, but personally, all the albums I've heard, I only can give 10 out of 10 to so many. But this album really achieves in what it's trying to do and doesn't have any flaws within the album. And if I do have to pick out some flaws, I would say that it's probably a challenging album to hear. It's not an easy listening album, and it requires the listener to listen to the album from start to finish. You can't go into the middle of the album and think you've heard everything, with each song sounding uniquely different from one another. You have to hear the album from start to finish. And a possible another flaw with this album could be the disjointed elements with too many ideas and they all seem disconnected. But personally, I feel like that fits with the chaotic nature that this album is and the unpredictable nature of this album, where it's always keeping you on your toes. But those are my thoughts on Loathe. I let it in and it took everything. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the album, or if you haven't heard the album, then I want to know if you're going to check it out. So comment down below your thoughts on this album. But other than that, thank you for tuning in. Till next time. Peace.